Welcome to the Croatian coast. Here you will find beautiful mountains that flow seamlessly into the sea, azure blue waters that never seem to stop, and inlets and bays filled with ancient, breathtaking villages. While cruising around the Adriatic and Mediterranean, we stopped in one of these historic little seaside settlements. You've probably seen it as King's Landing in the hit series Game of Thrones, or maybe you've just seen pictures of it in travel magazines. This stop was the enchanting medieval village of Dubrovnik. Located in the extreme south of Croatia, Dubrovnik sits on a stretch of shoreline that is independent from the rest of the country. Being surrounded by the sea to the west, Bosnia and Herzegovina in the north, and Montenegro in the south. Its location has made it an important trading hub for the region, and a target of conquest for centuries. It spent time as part of the Roman Empire, the Ostrogothic Kingdom, the Byzantine Empire, its own republic, the Venetian Republic, and many more throughout history. The city has suffered great losses both to nature and war, suffering a devastating earthquake in 1667, and even bombardment by Yugoslav forces as late as 1991. However, the prosperity of this fortified little village on the sea has continued, and it remains one of the most popular tourist destinations in the Mediterranean today. There were so many things that we wanted to see within the fortified walls of the city, but we decided to save that for later and take a ride through the beautiful Croatian countryside. We joined up with a tour group that would drive around the port and valleys surrounding the city, and then wind up on an amazing viewpoint over Lokrum Island and the Old Town. We arrived at our first stop, the Franjo Tuđman Bridge, named after the country's first president. This bridge is a feat of engineering, and from here you can really gain a perspective for the natural landscapes that surround the city. Croatia might be one of the most beautiful places we've ever seen, with the crystal clear and bright waters lapping up against the white stones, the huge pine trees rising up out of the fertile ground, and the streams and valleys driving in every direction. You feel like you're inside of a Bob Ross painting. After getting our fill of the bridge, we continued our way past the port, driving through little seaside towns and taking in all of the maritime vessels that were parked here. It was quite early in the morning, so things were still quiet. But that seemed to add to the magic of it all. We were riding in an open-air vehicle today, which was a surprise, and actually quite a relief. After all, it was extremely hot and humid today, and at even 8 o'clock in the morning, the temperatures were already in the 80s. We started going through the mountains and took in the surrounding landscapes. At one point, we could have turned left and entered Bosnia, but we continued on our course until we found the sea once again. Here we got some amazing views of the old town of Dubrovnik, which sticks out into the bay. We also got some great views of the nearby island of Lokrum. Lokrum Island was once a great fortification and place of worship. You can find many forts here, as well as the Benedictine monastery of St. Mary. This monastery has its origins nearly 1,000 years ago, and from what we heard, it's an amazing place to visit. Today we were not going to have enough time to go out to Lokrum, unfortunately, but the views we got while driving down the highway were spectacular. As we continued on, the views just kept coming. Eventually we made our way into the city, driving past the massive walls that surround the old town on all sides. These medieval fortifications have stood for nearly 600 years and earned Dubrovnik a spot on the UNESCO World Heritage Sites list. These walls have never been breached by a foreign army and are considered among some of the greatest medieval fortifications in history. We were dropped off near the entrance of the old town, and we decided to stop for a bit of coffee and something cool to drink before continuing our adventure through Dubrovnik. Alright, so we're in Dubrovnik. We are stopped at the city walls just to get a drink quick and some water. So it's like not even 9:30 in the morning, and it's like 80 degrees with 89% humidity, and we are dying. It is disgusting out. So I think we're gonna go and look at some of the King's Landing sites from Game of Thrones. These coffees look really good. Catherine had to get a coffee and a Coke because that's just who she is. Nothing?
I'm on vacation.
After being adequately refreshed and caffeinated, we entered into the city through the main gate, which was a first stop on our Game of Thrones sightseeing tour. We were awestruck by what we saw. This gate appeared many times throughout the first and second season of the show, with maybe the most iconic scene being the riot in King's Landing. We found that this city, much like the city of Kotor, which we had visited previously, immediately took you back through time into the Middle Ages. Everywhere you look here, there are statues, stone walls, small alleyways, and staircases leading to the upper parts of the town. The road from the main gate is the widest and longest, stretching all the way to the southern end of the old city, stopping before St. Blaise's Church and a 15th century clock tower. Continuing along this wide road, you wind up at the Cathedral of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary, another relic from the past built by Italian architects in the 18th century. From this church, we climbed back north to one of the highest points in the city, where we found a large open square and the Baroque Church of St. Ignatius. It was here that we stumbled upon another sighting of Game of Thrones fame, the Jesuit Steps. These stairs were the location for the infamous Walk of Shame performed on the show, which we will not show here, for obvious reasons. We continued on our walk through the town, loving all of the little nooks and alleyways that lead just about anywhere you want to go. Because of the narrow lanes here, this town is completely void of vehicles. You will only find pedestrians, which makes the experience much more enjoyable in our opinion. There's also no shortage of restaurants, bars, and souvenir shops. We even found a little farmer's market in one of the squares, though we were fairly certain it would close soon because of the heat. We continued through the winding alleys of the city until we found the next stop on our Game of Thrones list, Littlefinger's Brothel. In an almost ironic twist, what was a brothel for the show is actually an ethnographic museum in real life. We continued walking through the city, enjoying the various buildings and statues that were all over. We even found a huge fountain, which brings fresh water into the city. In fact, this water is even safe to drink, and many tourists were filling their bottles from the artfully decorated spouts. After enjoying what we could in this beautiful city, we made our way towards the exit, but not before taking in the Church of St. Salvation, one of the few buildings here that survived the Great Earthquake of 1667. On the way back to our ship, we stopped to marvel at the beauty of the West Harbor, which was another checkmark in our Game of Thrones sightseeing list. This harbor was used as the location for Blackwater Bay in the show. After visiting, we can completely understand why Dubrovnik has grown to be one of the premier travel locations in the Mediterranean in such a short period of time. This city is absolutely enchanting. The history and stories the city tells are mesmerizing. And because of the diplomatic tactfulness that members of the ruling powers here have had over the last 1,000 years, many of these stories and sites remain preserved for us to enjoy. The area surrounding the city is beautiful as well, and worth visiting in and of itself. Even if you are not a Game of Thrones fan, you can find something that you'll enjoy on this little gem in the Adriatic. Thanks for watching this video, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next one.